We never had this many people. There's some people in the lobby that are checking in that want to come, so I'm going to tell you my speech right now, and then you won't have to hear it again. Dad can just come in for it. This has been very fun, very daunting, very rewarding to have this lovely story in the town of Wise. We are connected to it in my house because my husband has grandparents that were both a wise woman and a wise man, and as far as the story of the college goes. So we knew this story, I knew this story coming into the family. And what I've learned through this is that people say, well, I think it happened like this. And then someone else from another family says, well, I always heard. And so what I have thought and what I have learned is that if I tell my children something right now, by the time I hear them telling it again, and they're adults, it will be a little twist. It'll have a little different, somebody that was in that story that really was not there because they have told it the way it sounded good to them. So what we've done is taken a true event, which happened on December 17th, 1953, in this very inn, in this very furniture, but not in this very space. They moved me. The fire marshal people told me I couldn't come. Actually, they said there was not room out there. So then we went to the dining room and it didn't work there either. So now we're in here and we've made it as Christmas as and the space as we could. Because what happened was there was a conversation in the dining room and it continued on into the evening to 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Into this space with cider and a pretty exciting conversation. I know, and you all know that that night was not the first time that anybody thought about having a college in West Virginia. That was not the case. There had been starts and fits and talks about it and people were talking about it. But here's what's perfectly great. There's three women. Can you turn that down? There's three women in West Virginia. They came in about 1948 and between 1948 and 1950. Not a one of them was from Wise. There are three women. One was from upstate New York. That's where they were living when the inn, Lois Tracy and Harry Tracy, were running an inn in upstate New York and it burned down. And so they needed a place to come, and Bill Thompson, Sr., asked, he somehow found out about this, and he asked if Harry would come down, and of course they couldn't afford to pay it. So they went together with the Martha Washington Inn. And so they shared the people, they shared the Tracys to run the inn. So that's how they got to Wise. And Mary Thompson and Bill Thompson came from Salem, right?
1948.
Yeah, 1948. They came here to go into business, I think with Herb Thompson. Yeah, with Herb Thompson, the coal brother, the tycoon rich brother that had money. The story is that the inn went on sale for $4,000, and Bill Thompson was here, and he bought it. He said, "We'll buy it." He called his brother and said, "I bought you something." And so he came down and paid his $2,000 cash to the bank, and Billy's granddaddy borrowed the money. That's the story, and that's the truth. But anyway, that's how they started, that's how they were here at the inn. And Mary Thompson, who was his wife, was a school teacher. Lois Tracy was the artist, and this art here is all Lois Tracy's. It's been borrowed and brought in from the houses, and so you can look at it up close later. But she had some remarkable stuff, remarkable paintings that she had. And so there's a lot around in houses here. There's a large one, I think it's of Powell Valley, going into the kitchen area. The big, tall, lovely, it's fabulous, and it's made it all these years. But they lived in the inn, and she looked out over the street. Up there, that's where her canvases were. So she painted there while they were here. She fell in love with Wise when she was very interested in the coal seams. So she had some drills done. I don't know what they're called, but she had some things drilled down in big pieces of coal mining. And so she said, "I know people think that coal is black and white, but I don't see it that way. When the light hits it, it has these beautiful colors and it dances." And she was very sparkly, and she died, I think, at 106, but she still was she couldn't see well enough to paint, but she still loved to think about it and to write about it and to talk about it. So we're very fortunate to have had her in this area. And some of her work is hanging in the Metropolitan Museum, and it's the coal mining stuff that she did from here. In her studio, her grandson says, she had the all of those in her studio. So that was Lois Tracy. Mary Thompson was a teacher. At 18, when she graduated from high school, she went straight to teaching, because in those days, you didn't have to have any certificate credit. You didn't have to have a credit, or you didn't have to do anything beyond that. So she taught English, and when she was here, she did some tutoring, and then this has nothing to do with this story, but when I met Mary Thompson, Louie Lee, that we all know and love, if you're from Wise, you know our precious Louie Lee, he was my school teacher. And I was in the 6th grade, and in the 6th grade, I think it was 6th grade, I feel like it was, in the 6th grade, most of the teachers were women. And there was nothing wrong with that, except there was this good-looking guy, and we were little, and we thought he was just the greatest thing. And he got drafted to Vietnam in my school year. And here comes this little, quiet, sweet, hair-tight dude into my classroom. And she introduced herself as Mrs. Thompson. And I'm like, okay, fine. I mean, you know, she had a hard time with those boys in my class because they didn't like this person at first. She won every single solitary one of them over. I did not know him, had nothing to do with meeting him. But she was phenomenal. And some of the roughest, toughest people that you come across said Mary Thompson was a great teacher. So she had a love for education. And then there was Jane Knox. Jane Knox lived in Bristol. All my life I thought Jane Knox was from Wise, because every time I knew about Jane Knox, when I first met Jane Knox, she was in Wise. But she lived in Bristol, and she and her husband came over here because they had an idea that they could have a business here, and they started the Knox, I don't know if it was Knox and Sons at the beginning, but it was Knox Oil Company. And when Deborah told me this, I was like, oh, I remember that. The house the blue house across from Hardy's now, the house that the Knox house, in that backyard, I can remember petroleum trucks back there, and they had the oil tanks in the backyard until they moved them. And so I was like, oh yeah, that makes some sense to me. So you've got a strong-headed businesswoman. Jane Knox didn't take much poo-wah, I say to my students. She didn't take much, but she was good at what she did. You've got her, who's interested in this thing called education in West Virginia. You've got Mary Thompson, who's a school teacher and needs the credits, and she knows it. She needs them herself. And then you've got Lois Tracy, who was way before her time and got arrested in Detroit for wearing pants when you weren't supposed to. So these three people that didn't know each other and had no reason to know each other, except they found themselves more than once at the inn, at study clubs, all over the place, and the hot topic of the day was more education in our area. We were stuck, we were isolated, we couldn't get out, our roads were terrible. To get to Abingdon would take an hour and a half at best. So they knew that, and they had been talking about it, and they were armed with quite a bit of research when the message came from Marion to Mary Thompson. Guess what? Sam Crockett and his son are coming to Wise. They didn't know they were going to get stuck in a snowstorm, but Mary Thompson was coming. She came, and they all acted like they didn't know he was coming. They knew he was coming. They all were ready. And so the thing about the women is that they were, in their own way, not a one of them alike. Not a personality in that crowd like. But it didn't matter. They had one goal. And the people in this town had one goal. And if you talk to any of the people that are related to this story, that the three wise men and the three wise women, oftentimes you don't even know they were in that story, because they didn't see it. They didn't see themselves that way. They saw this as just what happened. So we've put together a story based on a true event, and we hope you enjoy the show, and we'll talk about it later at the end of it. And so thank you all so much for coming.
Harry, I'm coming down this beautiful staircase, and I see the snow snow is really coming down out there. Oh, I hope this doesn't ruin our dinner crowd tonight. Oh, well, perhaps we'll have some folks who got stranded up here in the storm.
Well, we already had 10 guests check in, and we're waiting on more. There's multiple reservations in the dining room, and there's more on the books, but we'll just have to wait and see. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a full house of stranded travelers before the night's out.
Oh, let's get some extra hot cider ready just in case. Oh, Harry, did you hear anything this afternoon about the Venetian chandeliers? Have they shipped yet?
They have. I spoke to the representative this morning, and they should all arrive just before Christmas.
Oh, we will be swinging from the chandeliers in the dining room on New Year's Day after all. Oh, I can't wait to tell Mary. She will be so excited. She's been excited ever since we found them. Oh, to have them installed. Oh, Harry, what do you think about this canvas for the dining room too?
That's lovely.
Mary! What on earth? Please tell me you did not walk. It is treacherous out there. You are going to catch your cold. Tell me, Bill is parking the car.
Oh no, I drove down myself. I was practically creeping down the street. It was hard to see with the wind blowing so hard. Good thing there wasn't many cars on the road though. The sleet's the worst part.
Oh, is Bill parking the car?
Oh no.
No, he's coming later?
No, he wasn't feeling well today. You see, I told him it wasn't a good idea to be out shoveling our driveway yesterday because the wind was so bitter. And now he's got a scratchy throat and doesn't feel like coming out tonight. But I wasn't going to miss a chance to talk to Mr. Sam Crockett. Has he checked in yet?
Yes, Mr. Crockett and his son have both checked in, and they're having dinner in the dining room. He said that they were planning on traveling back to Marion in this weather, but I told him not to. He said he was just lucky to find the inn before he took that long, treacherous drive.
Oh, good for us, Mary. It will be a good chance for us to talk to him about the need for more classes here in Southwest Virginia. I have some statistics right here from our research, ready to go when the time is right.
Oh yes, and I'm very interested in hearing how the extension classes are going from Mr. Crockett's perspective. I've heard several people are taking the classes for credit. I know it's a good thing to have that new high school for these classes to take place.
State-of-the-art school, right here.
Oh, and Mary, Harry, talk to a representative from the chandelier company. They are going to arrive here before Christmas. We must work on getting them installed by New Year's.
Well, maybe we can aim for Christmas.
Mary, that's just a week away.
Oh, plenty of time, right, Mary?
Well, absolutely.
Did you two gentlemen enjoy your dinner?
Yes, sir. Very much so.
Absolutely. A welcome respite after a long day's travel. Lively conversations, good food, and all in a well-appointed room.
Well, we feel very fortunate to have such a lovely place to gather and visit in the town of Wise. Even on a snowy evening like this, the inn always has lively conversation.
Certainly. I particularly enjoyed the newly acquired arts and antiques since the last time I was here.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. We enjoy collecting lovely and interesting items for the inn. We're anticipating a few more pieces, significant items actually.
Can't wait
They
to see
should
it.
arrive before Christmas.
Would you two gentlemen like some hot cider?
That would be nice.
Yes.
Here we go.
I hope you enjoy. Cider is our before and after dinner specialty.
Sam and Robert, this is my wife, Lois Tracy, and Mary Thompson, wife of Bill Thompson, one of the owners of the inn.
Oh, you may know my sister, Annie Grant. She and her husband, Lucian, also live in Marion, are good friends of your wife.
Oh, yes. Mary Frances and Annie are very close friends. What a small world. It's wonderful to meet the both of you. This is my son, Robert. He came along with me to be my driver since he's out of school for Christmas break.
Well, great driving weather.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm sure your father not only appreciates the help, but the company.
Absolutely.
This sort of weather is never totally unexpected in these mountains, but this storm hit fast.
Oh, hello, Jane. Nice to see you. Come meet Mr. Sam Crockett. He's here from the Extension Office of the University of Virginia.
I expect you have discovered these roads are not easily traveled in weather like this.
think we have.
You would be right about that, ma'am. There was a few hairpin turns that nearly turned us around, going back the other direction.
Well, Robert wasn't driving, but we did have quite the close encounter with a horse that we startled into hurtling over the front of our moving vehicle on one of those hairpin turns. Now, fortunately, no damage was done to either party. You can head on up to your room if you'd like. Ladies, if you would excuse Robert, he's had quite the long day.
It was lovely to meet you, ladies.
Nice to meet
nice
you,
to
Robert.
meet you. Good night.
I'll be up in a little while.
Ladies, if you all could excuse me as well, I'm going to go finish my nightly checklist rounds. But feel free to talk as long as you all like.
Oh, why don't we move over to the window? It's a much more comfortable place to have a conversation. Mr. Crockett, would you like to sit here?
Well, that looks nice, thank you.
So, what brings you to Wise, Mr. Crockett?
I came on behalf of the university's extension office. I wanted to pay a personal visit to the graduating classes of the newly established J.J. Kelly High School.
Oh yes, we're quite proud of our new high school.
The building is remarkable. I had a personal tour of the facility, and let me tell you, it is the perfect place for the extension classes. We're looking for similar places throughout Southwest Virginia. We came from Marion, through Grundy, Hayside, and Clintwood to get to Wise today.
Well, there is a growing need for more opportunities here. The number of uncertified local teachers is extremely high.
Yes, we are very interested in the work being done in the extension courses, and there are great things happening in bridging the gap, but as Lois mentioned, we have a very large population of the underserved, and teachers can barely get enough educational credits to earn a teaching certificate.
Speaking of the underserved, Mary has worked personally on that issue. She seeks children in need and volunteers her time after school helping them learn to read.
Well, that's wonderful.
So, outside of Virginia, what are other states doing to offer higher education opportunities? There seems to be a growing number of people seeking to further their education beyond high school.
Well, there is, in fact, a growing movement across the nation due to population growth and the enablement of the GI Bill to establish two-year community colleges in remote areas. Most are under the umbrella of older institutions.
So what is being done in Virginia to bring higher education to these other population centers?
Well, let's see. As long ago as the 1920s, a couple of two-year community colleges sprung up in Norfolk and Richmond under the William and Mary administration.
What about VPI?
Well, VPI ran some courses in both, but outside of those courses, nothing permanent.
Oh, well, why don't you tell us about the work UVA is doing in Norfolk, Virginia, and in Fredericksburg?
Well, as you may already know, Mary, the university offers an extensive array of night courses in various existing facilities in Washington, D.C., and they are very similar to the ones here.
So what about Fredericksburg?
You ladies seem to have done your research regarding the university's extension work. Yes, in Fredericksburg, Mary Washington College, founded near the turn point of the century, was now affiliated with the university, the Women's Arts and Sciences Division.
Oh, a woman's college at the university? That's surprising. Now, so, the university clearly has a system in place for administering and overseeing the coursework offered remotely from Charlottesville, and in the case of Mary Washington, running a full-blown and well-respected existing institution.
Most definitely. But Mary Washington College was already a well-established school before the university's affiliation.
Well, there must be several things at play.
There are. As you all know, the war ending had an increase in population, and as a result, it involved an increase in demand for school systems. Now, what that means is an increase in enrollment for elementary schools at first, but after a couple of years, high schools and then colleges. But colleges, at least as of right now, just don't have enough room for them all.
As we've already said, this problem is not only in Virginia, but this phenomenon is sweeping the nation.
More specifically, how are the other states reacting to this crisis? Or should I say, the opportunity?
Well, as I said earlier, the older institutions are establishing new community colleges under the umbrella of older institutions. Now, there was a point in time when students bound for higher education could make their way to the universities regardless of where they were. But now with the sheer number of students, it's much harder and expensive for them to accommodate.
Well, the problem is really bigger than that. You see, many very bright and capable people from this part of Virginia don't have the financial means to make a move from, say, a VPI or a Bradford or an Emory and Henry, much less a UVA. But UVA already knows its way here, even on a snowy night.
Yes, Mary, but I'm afraid there's no budget outside of what's already being offered here.
Well, maybe the budget needs to be revisited.
Seriously, what would it take to at least increase our offerings here?
Well, it's certainly something that can be considered as we begin plans for the next biennium.
Oh, but can't we think bigger? This idea has been around for a while now. Why doesn't the University of Virginia establish a remote campus right here in Weiss? I mean, we already have this marvelous inn.
Oh, Mary, really? Whatever works, I guess.
Well, maybe we could offer a course here. Make use of that new meeting room.
Well, it's clear. The crying need is here. All we need is a place and a strong administering entity to manage the whole thing, including the coursework. Well, we already had that, an extension. If there was only an interest in Charlottesville to expand the offerings to that larger extent.
Now, don't underestimate the financial demands of running an institution of higher education. The initial cost is minor in comparison. Your own school system should be a clue at that. I suspect that of the entire Wise County budget, well over half is used on running the school system. Starting something up is one thing, but maintaining it is something else altogether, as I'm sure you know with maintaining this inn.
Or running an oil distribution company in this town.
Well, we're in prosperous times now with the price of coal up. Now that has gone up and down over the decades, but it seems to me the time is ideal for a discussion. We wouldn't be totally asking for a handout. Our people are too proud for that. We just need the advantage of hitching the wagon to a strong team of horses.
You know something about our horses after your travel story this evening.
Oh, but not only that, but this discussion has moral implications.
Yes, the Commonwealth should be on board for this. It's a long way to Richmond. We have 5 state capitals closer than our own,
right.
But we're Virginians all the same. And besides, we've been a strong cog in the organization's wheel for some time now.
Well, that ought to be good for something, it seems.
And I read recently that Virginia ranks one of the lowest in the country for students seeking higher education after high school.
Well, that is true. And as a matter of fact, that statistic is a major embarrassment to our governing body.
Yes, it is.
But now that we're getting political, you do have some good legislators in Senator Long and Delegates Camblos and Cantrell. That very well may be a plus. But if you're talking about the UVA's affiliation with this, we have to get that bridge crossed first.
Oh, to have a branch, the University of Virginia in Wise. Doesn't that sound lovely?
It sounds audacious.
It sounds just and about time.
But as we already discussed, the extension courses are great, but there's not enough of them offered to even earn a teaching certificate.
Well, you ladies may very well be making me a believer. Certainly, the need is great, but I do wonder how this all will go. We have some major hurdles to cross. But it very well may be worthwhile. There may just be an opening. It's worth a shot. I think a discussion with the university officials very well be worthwhile.
So then, how do we attack it? Who must we enlist early?
Oh, there have actually been a couple of local attempts at establishing a college in this county. You see, the Episcopal Church once set up a graduate program, and they even went as far to make a promotional pamphlet.
And I've heard since I got here in Wise, the former public school that was just this year housed grades 1 through 12 was called the Gladesville College by the locals.
That's interesting.
After all, it was the only educational facility serving the town of Wise.
The point is, a real college of the University of Virginia would be welcomed by all. A realization of a dream that's been around for decades.
And
I can tell.
I think we'll find there will be support from the locality, both in spirit and financially. Even if the ongoing cost is shared with the university, people will support this.
The cost of going to college without having to pay for room and board can be afforded. And, as you already said, we have many local candidates on the GI Bill, which will be beneficial to both students and the college.
Ladies, you need to let this poor weary traveler get up to his room. It'll take some time to wind down. Lois will be up half the night.
Ladies, I suggest you collectively reflect over our lively discussion tonight. Enlist others who may share your same interests, and see what may be done about establishing a movement towards a college at Wise.
Do you really think the university would be interested in putting a campus here in Wise?
Well, it's certainly not in the university's pattern, at least right now. I really do wonder what may be done. But you've made some strong arguments tonight, and I think you could get it done.
Well, we most definitely want to be part of that conversation. It's exciting to think that a college of the University of Virginia could be right here.
I think you'll find that the timing on our end is perfect. This idea has been talked about around here for long enough.
Thank you for your time tonight, Mr. Crockett. This has been very encouraging. What a marvelous opportunity this snowy evening has afforded us.
Indeed. Good night, ladies.
Good night. Oh, it's better than we ever imagined.
This is exactly the encouragement we needed for some positive action on the idea of a college in Wise that's been talked about for so long now. Let's sleep on it. And can we maybe have lunch tomorrow? I'd like to get back to Mr. Crockett soon. Keep the momentum going.
I do have an important meeting scheduled in the late morning, but I will be here afterwards as soon as possible.
I think I can meet for lunch tomorrow. I'm anxious now to get home and tell this information to Bill. I'll call you in the morning.
You know, they did meet that very next day and throughout the weekend. They gathered information, they got community support, and Sam Crockett was right. Wise County had great support in our General Assembly with our local legislators.
I'll tell you something, Lois Tracy wasn't the only person that had a hard time getting to sleep that night. When Mary Thompson left this place, she started up Main Street towards the home. By the way, their house was right where Hardee's is today. Okay, so that wasn't a very long drive. Jane Knox lived right straight across the street. And so she came in, Bill was still awake, and so she very excitedly told the whole story of what had happened at the end that night. Well, Bill, interestingly enough, just a few years before he came to Wise, was working for the L&W Railroad. He had some particular administrative skills that kind of jumped into play very quickly here. He was secretary to the president of the L&W Railroad before he came to Wise. So he did what he was accustomed to do, went down the hall, got on the typewriter, and immediately started capturing all the notes, capturing everything that Mary had said to him, and put it in memo form, and then proffered up a draft letter to Colgate Darden that would ask for a meeting and try to get all this subject on the table. The very next morning, he took all that information to Kenneth Asbury, the mayor of Wise. The firestorm had begun.
On December 21st, Lois Tracy called Sam Crockett. She told him they had come up with so many ideas, and they really wanted to meet with him again and discuss what they had found. Sam Crockett was agreeable, said he would be glad to come back to Wise, and they scheduled a meeting for January 5th, 1954, right here at the Wise Inn.
So by the time that meeting came around, a virtual powerhouse committee had been assembled. There was the Senator M.M. Long from St. Paul. There was Delegate Orby Cantrell from the Pound. J.J. Kelly, Superintendent of Schools. Kenneth Asbury, Mayor of the town. So then there was Bill and Mary Thompson, there was Harry and Lois Tracy, and Jane Knox, all ready to meet.
On January 20th, 1954, Kenneth Asbury, my father, wrote a letter to Mr. Zimmer at the University of Virginia. He was, at that time, he was the head of the Extension Division for the university. He asked for a meeting. He asked if a delegation from Wise could come to Charlottesville and meet with Colgate Darden. Colgate Darden at that time was the president of the University of Virginia and also a former governor of Virginia.
So Bill Thompson and Kenneth Asbury decided it would be a good time to enlist some more help. So they enlisted the help of Fred Greer, a noted attorney down in Norton, who was also a UVA alum. And so the three men, Fred Greer, Bill Thompson, and Kenneth Asbury, got in the car on February the 18th, 1954, and headed to Charlottesville for a meeting. When they got there, they encountered the first resistance that Sam Crockett was sort of warning them about, that was not financial in nature, but the first resistance they came in contact with was George Zimmer, who was the director of Extension Services at the University of Virginia. And George Zimmer was not happy about this idea at all. In fact, he discouraged them and told them that he didn't think a meeting with Colgate Darden was in order at this particular time. There was no room in the budget for a college at Wise. Well, the men did not just give up and head on back home. They started talking with him a little bit and learning a little bit about him and saying, you know, being as that we've come all this way, why couldn't we just go down the hall and see President Darden? Well, George Zimmer finally succumbed. He said, but do not talk about a college at Wise. So they got in the room. Here's the interesting part. George Zimmer walked him down the hallway, walked him into the room. As soon as they walked in, Colgate Darden looked up with a big smile on his face. He jumped up from the desk and came around and threw both arms around Fred Greer. And he pushed him back and said, Freddie, what can I do for you today? It was probably about that time that George Zimmer was thinking, maybe I should rethink my position. Nobody knows that for sure. But the meeting did go on, and with a lot of excitement, and the good news was that Colgate Darden was enthralled with this idea. He immediately jumped on board and said, this is exactly what we need to be doing. And so he said, what I suggest you guys do is go directly to General Assembly. General Assembly was in session. In fact, they were starting, the Appropriations Committee was beginning to put their appropriations bill together for the next biennium. You need to go down there and get some money. So they immediately went to Richmond.
No, they all jumped in the car. My dad, being the youngest, was driving. So they hit Interstate 64, headed for Richmond. They got to get there. The General Assembly's in session. On the way, they got a speeding ticket. Actually, Dad got a speeding ticket. It was not his first speeding ticket. It certainly was not his last. They managed to get the speeding ticket, head on into Richmond. They arrive at the Capitol, and they cannot find a parking space anywhere. I mean, nowhere. So they decided they'd already had a speeding ticket. Let's go for it. Parked at a no parking zone, rushed into the building, found their local legislators, talked to them about the project they had, and the local legislators listened and were most helpful. They wanted to see this happen. So they met with the Appropriations Committee that very day.
So President Darden, the former governor, as you know, was very savvy about the inner workings of General Assembly, so he gave him some very strong advice. Do not talk anything about a college at Wise when you approach the Appropriations Committee. Do not make any tie to the University of Virginia. Here's what you do. You go down and make a case for more extension money for the work in Southwest Virginia. Money to support education in Southwest Virginia. Hard to turn that down. So the discussion began, and before the three men left the room, the committee had agreed to put that in the budget, and that the amount would be $10,000 over the next biennium, $5,000 per year for the 2 years of the biennium.
With the promise of funding, excitement around WISE began to grow big time. There was lots of buzz about what had to be done and what different people could do. Everybody wanted to be involved. At one meeting Sam Crockett held with a group of individuals, he tried to kind of make them understand this is a big, big project. You know, you need to know what you're getting into. So he told them, you're going to have to restore that poor farm building. You're going to have to raise funds. You're going to have to find the faculty and hire them. And not the least of which, you're going to have to figure out if there's actually interest in students attending a college at WISE. He said the group just looked at him, and then they just said, you know, that's just really not a problem.
So yes, the talk around WISE was just on fire everywhere, down on the street corners, in the barber shops, in the beauty parlors, at the study club, at the Kiwanis Club, out at the school board meeting, at the county board of supervisors meeting, everybody was talking about it.
So early in the spring of 1954, Colgate Darden, armed with the evidence and to support the arguments of these three wise women that he met with on that very snowy night, along with proof that there was regional interest in this project, he began to act on behalf of that little college in WISE.
Sam Crockett, on his drive into WISE one day, picked up a hitchhiker, and that hitchhiker was a coal miner, had just gotten off, and he was on his way into WISE, and they started talking, and Sam Crockett told him about why he was there and about the college, and the coal miner said, why, yeah, I've heard about that college. We've been talking about it down in the mines. In fact, there was a group that was standing around talking about that new college up there just this past week. And, you know, my dad was a coal miner. I'm a coal miner. My son's a coal miner. I've got a grandson. If he wants to go in the mines, he can go in the mines. I'd be proud for that. But I'd also like him to have some other options. And if he can get an education around here, especially higher education, maybe some other options would open for him. A pail went around. Everybody was putting money in it, and I put in my 50 cents.
With a thoroughly researched and well-prepared request in hand, the General Assembly appropriated that $10,000, $5,000 for 2 years, each year of the biennium.
So there's a lot of work to be done. That was good news. A lot of work to be done, though. And once again, George Zimmer got an assignment. By this time, he was a disciple. He was a converted, and he proved his worth because he worked very hard over the next period of time to make this happen. And the first thing he had to do is go to all the colleges within the University of Virginia, approach the deans, and get their support for this idea. You can imagine the research of the pitch and how much time that takes to do something like that. He did them one at a time, and he got the support of all the colleges at the University of Virginia. Next, he had to go to Martha Washington, right? They were also affiliated. So he had to do the same thing at Martha Washington. And then Colgate Darden had asked him to go out beyond Virginia into the other states, call college presidents in Michigan and California and your equivalents in those same places and find out what they're doing. So an entire very well-researched study came together that was into one document that was then presented to Colgate Darden, who in turn presented it to the Board of Visitors. The Board of Visitors got the support to continue.
The experiment proved to be a success. Letters of applications began to come in at a rapid rate, and attached was an admission fee of $10 each.
So after receiving this news, the BOD, Board of Visitors, encouraged to go further and to continue studying this WISE experiment, as it was being called. The big question, of course, was, would students come? Would anybody come? Will the students apply?
During that first year, a total of 402 students attended. That's including part-time students as well as summer school students.
By September 13th, 1954, a mere 9 months after the events of the snowy evening, in the end, the college opened. and enrolled 109 full-time students on the county poor farm.
In 1957, the college acquired the small stone building first named Martha Randolph Hall. Also, the college's very first biology professor was hired, Joseph C. Smitty. We all love him as Papa Joe. This began his historic 28-year chancellorship.
And if I could back up just a hair, in 1955, that's when the Clinch Valley College of the University of Virginia name was adopted and officially made. In 1956, the Wise County Board of Supervisors came to an agreement with the University of Virginia to transfer the property, 110 acres and one building, to the University of Virginia for $1. The big deal, though, is the responsibility of ownership was now belonged to the University of Virginia.
Fast forward to 1999, the college name was officially changed to the University of Virginia's College at Wise. There are now 53 buildings for academic and student life located on that beautiful 396-acre campus. When you go across campus, you can see beautiful lawns, trees, walkways, and athletic facilities.
So let's look at 2024 now. The year 2024. This year, the largest class enrolled in the history of the school, 2,236 students full-time enrolled into the University of Virginia's College at Wise this year. The endowment and long-term investments is $166 million. Think that coal miner would be happy about that? Yeah. There are 33 major programs, there's 39 minors, and there's graduate courses being offered. You know, no one who knows this story can ever pass by, I sure can, pass by the school during the day or at night. I like the night view. Don't you like the night view? Yeah, without thinking of the people that started this whole thing, the things that happened in the early days that got us going. But just as important, even more important, are the people that maintained it and sustained it and grew it and built it into the college it is today. You know, when you come out of Wise, take a right on Darden Drive. You go up to the first entrance to the main campus, you take a left into the campus, and you're welcomed by Crockett Hall. Just to your right is Smitty Hall. Up on top of the hill is the Pippin Wiley building. You got Campbell Hall off to your left. You got C. Bascom Slim Student Center. You got the Ely addition to that. You've got the Bauer Sturgill Hall, the Fred Greer Hall. When you stand there, you just feel like, you know, a warm embrace. There's a warm embrace from all those people. And the way I look at it, that warm embrace was kicked off. It was kicked off by a very, I'm going to say, providential meeting, an encounter on December the 17th, 1953, at the Inn at Wise, with 3 wise women who met Sam Crockett, the extension agent of UVA. That was the spark that lit the flame that brought us UVA Wise.
So much has happened since that snowy night.
All that hard work and a dream finally paid off. Who could have ever imagined all this happening right here?
We